Trucks filled with supplies backed up in long lines at Egypt's border with Gaza. Israel putting a stop to all food and other supplies heading into the territory, citing a refusal by Hamas to accept a new ceasefire proposal. The White House is backing Israel's decision. Egypt, though, accusing Israel of using starvation as a weapon. The first phase of a ceasefire agreement expired Saturday, and no framework is yet in place for the planned second phase to begin. Meanwhile, another major sign of support for Israel coming from the White House, Secretary of State Marco Rubio signing an emergency declaration to fast-track about $4 billion in additional military aid as the future of the fragile ceasefire deal remains in limbo. With us now, CEO of the Jewish News Syndicate, Alex Traiman. He's also an award-winning documentary filmmaker. First of all, your reaction to the stop of aid getting into Gaza right now from Israel.
Well, there's a lot of people in Israel that think this is a long overdue move. Israel agreed to a deal that many in Israel considered immoral, with the release of over 1,900 prisoners, some captured during the war and others released with blood on their hands from Israeli jails for committing acts of terror. If Hamas is now not willing to agree to a proposal to allow a ceasefire to continue over Ramadan and Passover, with the release of only half of the remaining hostages up front and half at the end, this is a major lever that Israel has to hold against Hamas, the delivery of humanitarian aid.
And then in addition to that, you've got the $4 billion in additional military aid to Israel. How will that impact this situation?
I think it's a strong indication that Israel has the United States backing to go back to war if the ceasefire will not continue. Israel has stated that there was a side letter on the agreement that they signed for the 42-day phase one, that if negotiations were not continuing in earnest, that they would have a right to go back in. So Israel's now amassing major forces, over 350,000 troops, getting ready to go back into the Gaza Strip. As many as 50,000 troops could enter the Strip at any given time, and it's clear that the United States is giving Israel the weapons that it needs to carry out another major operation inside Gaza.
So what is necessary, Alex, to get phase two talks going?
Well, Israel said that they are willing to accept the proposal put on the table by Steve Witkoff, which would call for a 50-day additional ceasefire that would run through the entire month of Ramadan, as well as the Jewish holiday of Passover, which follows the next month. If Hamas will release half of the remaining living hostages up front and the other half in one release at the very end of the 50-day period. And Israel's also willing to negotiate the release of terrorists from Israeli prisons in exchange for those hostages. It seems like it's a reasonable extension to the first part of the deal, but Hamas is understanding that Israel may opt to go back to war even after all of those hostages are released, and therefore they're not willing to give Israel what it wants back right now, which is the return of all those living and dead hostages.
And remind folks at home how many hostages remain in Gaza.
We're talking about 69 hostages, of which Israel believes that 25 of them are alive.
Alex Traiman, as always, thank you.
Thank you for having me.